today, again, we're going to talk about this topic is around, optimizing the infrastructure spend, even though the focus is more on infrastructure services and, with data insights. But the what I would do is, it's a combination of the solution plus, there is quite a bit of demo I have in terms of how we could use a solution around conversational insights for specific, specifically related to the topic of today. It's around managing infrastructure costs and spending, right? So I think, so with that, let me just a quick introduction of, again, iLink Digital. It's a combination of, it's a family of companies, each one of us focusing on specific areas of expertise. And, I come under Purple Slate. And what we really do is, we focus primarily on solutions around conversational AI, natural language processing, voice based technologies and all that. And one such solution is what, I'm going to talk about today, especially within the context of infrastructure management and services. So I've been in this industry for close to 3 decades now. Significant portion of it is in the Wall Street, where I was building applications around with data science, data engineering, machine learning, and all that. So just, I thought I'll just start with this, the most fashionable topic of the day, which is around ChatGPT. Almost everybody, it's while the whole world is going crazy with the opportunities with LLMs, OpenAI, ChatGPT in particular, Bard. Google recently came up with that, and Microsoft has made a huge investment in OpenAI and all that. In terms of what we could do with this technology, and then there is all kinds of opportunities and solutions being thrown at, and especially there is this new jargons being thrown into the play. It's like you have prompt engineers as a new profession and all that, right? So with this context around ChatGPT, is our solution, are we also talking something very, very similar? In fact, just to set the context, I thought it's not really a generative AI solution. Ours, it's even though it is more to do with AI, the natural language processing side of it, voice and all that, but definitely we do not. This is not a solution which is built on any of the OpenAI or on the LLM-based technologies. In fact, I thought I'll just, even this question I was asking ChatGPT, in the sense, can this be even used to analyze large volume of data and all that? And see, it's while there are use cases being shown with ChatGPT, its ability to number crunch and all that, but definitely, it has to be trained on a data set, and especially with the focus around information security, on what data can go out, what cannot, and all that. Definitely, it's doing it through OpenAI. That could be a possibility in the days ahead. With where you have private LLMs and all that. But definitely, our solution is not something which is built on top of generative AI. But I'll just talk more about how things work and all that in the coming slides, right? So I just wanted to set, or rather start with the context around, especially for some, if many of you, if you have been in the data analytics or the business intelligence field, especially if you've been using data to solve business problems, take decisions, and all that, right? I think these are some very, very familiar, topics in the sense, especially in very large organization, the it's always around, analytics efforts take a lot of time, and then, it costs a lot of money. There are just way too many dashboards and scorecards and KPIs and whatnot, right? I think definitely dashboards have reached a stage where, I think we have to think in terms of, different ways. Dashboards do serve a purpose, absolutely, no question about it. But at the same time, with the amount of data that is getting collected, with the way the data is being used for operational decision making, there are definitely, It's we need to think of newer ways to consume data, I think, and information, especially with the way we've been using the popular search engines for anything else in our life, right? I think so the dashboards definitely they are being reaching a stage where they need some reimagination. And also the third one, with the amount of data that is getting collected, metadata, data glossary, yeah, how do we even manage the technical definitions versus the business terms and all that? I think that is really becoming a challenge in term. I mean, primarily because of the amount of data that is being collected, with the increased digitization and all that. And self-service BI, you have all these different tools which are supposed to accelerate analytics consumption. They're also reaching a stage where you really need somebody else. It is not necessarily quote unquote self-service. You really need somebody, to build these dashboards and metrics, for your business users, right? So with this context, I mean, I think these are the reason I'm even starting with this is because these are specifically the problems, which we are trying to address. In fact, in today's context, when you have so much amount of data, right? How do we really simplify information access to overcome some of these familiar challenges, right? So, I mean, one very interesting stat, which I just ran was, most of the job roles, I think, people do spend significant amount of time, looking for information on a day-to-day basis, right? And also, I mean, there's also one very interesting graphic I just ran into. Everything else in our life, whether it is ordering food or, flights, whatever, I think, they're all the time taken to consume some of those services are shrinking, but at the same time, our ability, or rather, to get an analytics work or a dashboard project or a BI project still takes a good amount of time. Why shouldn't that be much faster or much swifter, very similar to any other services, right? I think the modern, as the title says, the modern world speed is accelerating, so at the same time, our ability to consume information should also, would be good to match that speed. So if I have to sum it up, I think, I would say today's information needs has to be around a platform, which kind of caters to these five different areas, in the sense how trusted information, then, I mean, you have so many different user personas, user groups, consuming information. How can we have an interface or an application which just caters to all these, at delivering information much faster at scale, and also, which is very, very easy to understand. I think that's pretty much what we're really trying to address, in the solution, right? And also, I would just to set some context, right? I think, if you really look at it, today's data-rich digital world, the data sets are increasing, and more, I mean, there are just too many different BI tools, one to build the dashboards, one for reports, and so many things. I mean, there are just, and how do we even consume this information and then integrate it with other business applications and all that? I mean, there's just way too many what we call as fragmented BI tools and all that, right? And the sixth point, I think that is also a very, very common problem. The analytics projects or investments fail to deliver, or rather, there is always a challenge, in terms of getting the ROI on these tool sets, right? And more than that, at the end of the day, whether we are consuming reports, dashboards, or anything else, I mean, these are basically, they try to answer a question, we have in our mind. I mean, so it's like we try to, there is a cognitive workload, in terms when we try to interpret a chart or a report or, a piece of number, we are just trying to get an answer, to a question related to whatever the business, it could be like, hey, how much storage spend, did we have last month? Is our cost really going up or down? How many vulnerabilities, do we have in our IT assets across regions and all that? All these are different questions which we have. It's just that, we try to get the answers for these questions, from the various BI tools, whether it is reports, dashboards, or anything. Fundamentally, right, I think, all we have is a bunch of questions, which where we're trying to get answers. And And also, I think, the modern day needs is also changing, we're spending good amount of time in collaboration platforms, can we really converge these BI tools also into a collaboration platform, or rather match this the way in which we consume any other information just by chatting others? Can we really chat and then try to get these questions on data answered, right? Um, so it's basic. Fundamentally, this is a question: how do we make the enterprise data available easily for everyone's use, right? I mean, when we say easily, of course, it is just the user interface we are talking about, not necessarily anything to do with the information security or the controls and all that. I think all those things are still very, very important, key elements. I mean, especially with data privacy and all that. It's just that the interface can it be much, much simpler, to get those questions answered, right? And also, just before I step into the applications and then the show, I also just wanted to say, for if you're not familiar with conversational AI, what exactly are we really, do we mean by conversational AI? It is the app, what simplest what we give is around leveraging technologies with both voice and text, or rather the way we communicate, using language as an interface. I think, can I really use a similar concept, for even for business intelligence or data insights? See, I mean, I gave this example. When I'm looking at a chart, or rather, can I really ask, hey, show me the trend in the CPU usage for the past 2 weeks on this particular application, right? Can I really get access to data this way, in simple English constructs, the way, we communicate, right? So that is pretty much what, what conversational AI, is, right? And also, just to set the context, I mean, it's all the way we have the information systems have evolved, right? I think, starting from the old mainframe computers to the static reports to dashboards, whatnot. And then, we also have the smartphone revolution, which drove, the mobile BI and all that. Now, having said that, our access to the time it took for us to consume information is also shrinking, so it's like whatever that used to take weeks or days, definitely not these days. Whenever we have a question, we immediately jump into a search engine, ask that question, right? So similarly, why can't there be a similar interface, for that momentary information need? Why can't that be just like the search engine we use for any other information? So that is where we kind of propose, putting our solution around conversational insights, right? And and also just to since we're talking about conversations, and then talk the way if not for these information systems, the way we would consume information is, it's like we ask a trusted source, we get the answer, and then this kind of goes in an iterative fashion. We just, your answer kind of triggers more questions, and then you get the answers. Finally, once we have it, we kind of use it for decision making and all that. This is the way we consume information, or or go about approach and analytic work. So why can't the approach be very, very similar even in a BI tool, where we ask a whole bunch of questions until we have the answer, which we desire, right? But contrast this to how the analytics world is today. I mean, especially for people who have been in this BI world for, I mean, this is precisely what I mean by, though many of would like to call it as dashboards are dead. It's not necessarily dead, but I would say there's just too much of them. I mean, in some places have been there are like more metrics and dashboards than even the number of employees, or, or the scorecards. There's just too many of them, and then each one of them curated for a specific user. And sometimes there is also inconsistencies across these different metrics and all that. So there's just definitely the interface could be, or rather the BI offerings could be much, much simpler, right? And the information access is still too technical. I mean, especially for business folks, non-technology folks. I think still there is an iterative fashion, or rather the amount of time it takes for you to produce new analytic output, it is very extremely time consuming. And then it's a bit more technical. It is not necessarily quote unquote pure self-serve, right? And the in the source for us, I mean, this is a very, very common pattern across any place. It's like there is a lot of delays in getting access to information, because each one of them really become a project, and then for you to make changes to a new metric, or even if there is a slight variation, each one of them really becomes a project, and then which causes extreme delays, which kind of in turn affects the decision making process, or how where this data is really used for consumption and all that, right? So the way I would also put it is, I think the modern day, I mean, we have technologies around capture and store maturing at very high pay, then right now it's the problem is more around making it availability, or rather how do we simplify this information access. I think that's where the issue is really moving to. I think with increased digital digitization efforts and all that, I think every organization is spending huge, or rather they have made huge investments to capture information, but how do we really make this easily available for information access? I think that is going to be the the challenge which a modern BI tool may have to solve it, right? The other thing I would also show is around these two factors around consuming information: findability and findability is your ability to locate a particular. So I've just given an example here. Hey, how many critical vulnerabilities do we have? Do we need to address? So there is a specific question I have, and I'm able to get an answer. But at the same time, especially with the huge volume of information which we are collecting, there is also these, what we call as the unknown unknowns. How good is your BI tool to uncover some of these hidden insights, right? Hey, by the way, do you know that 90% of those vulnerabilities come from this specific region or whatever? I think how quickly are we able to discover insights, with very, very less effort? I think that's one of the critical success factor for any of the modern BI tool, right? So, or, this is the way I would call it. Say, how do we produce it? I didn't know this. I think there are so much amount of data that is being collected, even for somebody to be familiar with these insights, right? So how do we really go about doing this? I think, with that context, so this is where, I was saying, rather than going with the traditional approach of making use of dashboards, reports, and all that, why can't we just let the user ask questions, right? It's just like this. I mean, I've just given an example. It's when we have a data set, it could even be any application, any data warehouse, any. So, or as simple as even an Excel sheet. Why can't we just let users ask questions on those data sets rather than trying to produce custom, or rather custom craft metrics and reports for that, right? So it's like this. Hey, show me the usage on the mobile platforms, or rather, I mean, how I mean, say if a doctor is treating, it's more like, show me the pets that were treated for a specific disease or whatever it is. I think more and more with the maturity of the natural language processing, and then the AI based applications, I think there is an increasing trend of the insights or data being consumed in a conversational approach. I think that's pretty much what we're going to I'm going to quickly show a demo as well, their application. That's the whole idea behind this, the whole solution. It's can we really let the users ask the question, not necessarily provide them a whole some predefined set of metrics, because every user will have their own need. And why can't we just let them ask that question, across whatever data set that's available, right? Here's a simple example. One way to do that is, hey, how are we spending where are we really spending the most? I could try to interpret this. Definitely, as I said, this is not a replacement for a dashboards. I mean, the dashboards, KPIs, and all, they do serve a very specific purpose, no question about it. I mean, someone has put some thought to craft these key performance indicators to say that, hey, what, these are the metrics I really need to track on a very, periodic manner, right? So absolutely, the dashboards do have a purpose. I mean, this is not a replacement for those, but at the same time, there are questions. Sometimes, we cross the boundary of the dashboards. Hey, a particular metric is not available, particular time frame is not available. You do not have the ability to do a drill down. That's where, what we end up doing is creating a new dashboards or more metrics, and then, it just goes out of control. Rather, on those scenarios, why can't we just have a very, very completely dynamic interface where the users can just ask questions? That's the whole idea behind, this solution, right? So, I mean, this is where, I mean, this is our application. It's called Kia, by the way. If you're curious, um, it's a parrot species supposed to be have found in New Zealand, and they are supposed to have very, very high IQ levels. So we thought, hey, why not pick this name? That's why we named our solution as Kia, right? So an example is something like this. Say, hey, show me the trend of storage cost by project name. So let me quickly in this at this stage, let me just show a demo. So this is our application. I'll just come to it in terms of I have a whole bunch of data sets here. Sorry, just give me 1 second. So this is a very simple interface. It looks very familiar to our search engine and all that, but there are other interfaces of this as well. I'll just show in a minute, right? So I can just go and ask questions like this. Hey, show me the average storage cost by cloud provider, and then it just gives me the metric. Hey, I asked for all these are absolutely dynamics. If you really look at it, instead of cloud provider, I'm just looking at, hey, what else can I look at? I do have a data glossary. These are all the data elements I have. So I have a whole bunch of categories. Let me just use this, by component. Let me. So you end up, creating whatever the questions or whatever usage, how much of a data you have. You can just. I can even say this. Hey, in um, I think I may have the data for 2020, I guess. Yeah, here it is. So for the time interval that is available, on across any dimension, any measure, I have the flexibility to ask this question, and it's just going to get me the data. And then I have the ability to look at the granular details. I can download, I can do so many things. So that's the whole idea behind an interface like this, where we're just making it completely dynamic with an ability to ask questions, right? So there is a whole bunch of data sets, I may have. I can just pick any of these, switch the context to move to some other data set, and then just start asking questions in English. So we are just moving away from the concept of sticking to a rather specific set of metrics, and then and where each one of these additional metric or a need could become a project. We're just saying, hey, if users are different, their information needs are different, their questions are different. So why don't we just make it completely dynamic, right? I think that's the whole idea. So say this is again another example on vulnerabilities, right? So um, this whole thing for you to build, it comes out of a low code application. Nothing, not even a single line of code, you have to write. So I can go and change it to a different visualization and whatnot. I can filter. And then say for example, it gives me a whole bunch of insights. Say now I can even show a trend. So here it says, this is the way we are talking about the vulnerabilities. It shows a trend of those vulnerabilities, and all these kind of, the metric comes out of the box based on whatever the questions you have. That's so. I'll just come back to this demo. We'll do a lot more. There are more variations to it, and I'll just come to that. But I just wanted to set the context. When we were talking about this, what exactly do we mean by conversational? That's pretty much it. And in the sense, rather than looking at preset metrics, why don't we just in pure language, and then when we talk about language, it also involves people refer to the same term in so many different ways. I mean, what I really mean by that is, say in this case, so if I have, let me pick one category. So it's like model name. I can call it as, there is a whole bunch of synonyms you can define. I can call it as product model, device model, hardware model, whatever it is. Different users, the business users might refer to it differently. I can define a vocabulary, refer to the same name in so many different ways, and then still be able to get those answers. So When we talk about human conversations, definitely the vocabulary plays a big role. So those, all those abilities are all, your features available within a solution like this as well, right? So that's at a very high level is what, we really mean by this conversational AI solution. I'll just come to the demo very soon. Maybe I'll just take a quick pass here. Any questions, any comments? I hope everyone is still able to see the screens.
Yes, Shiva, we can see your screen.
Great, thank you. So let me move on. I mean, by the way, feel free to, if there are any questions, please feel free to post it in the chat. Somebody can read it out, and then, definitely I'd be more than happy to answer those, right? So having said, given set the context on what really conversational interface is, right? So now here is a very, very quick summary of, or rather, this is a definition we give for our solution. Kia helps you get answers and more on the questions you have, and in simple language constructs. I think that's the key part to it. It is purely in simple English language constructs, just like how we would converse. And then, the way I see this is, as I said, given the challenges around the current set of BI tools we have, I mean, there are just too many dashboards, reports, the time it takes, for somebody to create new metrics and all that. I think, I really feel this could be the next, or rather, it could be part of the business intelligence evolution, where you have an ability to consume information in very, very simple English constructs, the way we always used to do, right? And of course, behind the scenes, there is a good amount of AI involved, right from your natural language processing, because, if I have to really simplify this, the key, secret sauce behind this solution is your ability to convert an English text or a phrase into a database query, and then, bring the data response back, in visuals, text, voice, whatnot, right? I think, so there is a good amount of technology involved behind the scenes. That's what, we have built. That's what Kia really brings in, right? So, or in other words, as I said, when we have an information need, when we ask, fellow human beings or a knowledgeable resource, why can't that be Kia? You train Kia, and then, it has the ability to respond back, right? So, or rather, how do we turn a data set? When we say data set, not necessarily simple files, very, very large data sets. Some of our installations, they go up to hundreds of millions of rows of data, and then, it can respond back, right? How do we really take very large data sets, any database technology, and then, and with an ability to answer these questions, right, out of those data sets? So very, very simple steps. We do have a low code application that helps you, train the Kia, with your own data. The data can be, as I said, we support almost all, you name it, all possible database systems, or specific to infrastructure, it can connect to your Azure portal or AWS portal or GCP, whatever it is. And then, and it can come back and respond back, with those questions, right? I think it can get the data, from database systems, files, APIs. I think, that's the approach, we use for, especially within since today's topic is around, IT infrastructure management, if you are using any of those cloud vendor platforms, it can directly connect to those platforms, source the data, and then, that's what it really uses for training, for you, for it to respond back with the answers, right? So very simple process. There is a low code interface. I'll just quickly show that as well. You have an ability to connect to any data. What exactly I mean by that, let me just show here. So this is, I can go and add, let me just sign in quickly. I mean, there is a whole bunch of data sets I have. I can upload a file, or I can connect to a database, or, I can connect to any other application, through APIs. And once I have done, there is a whole bunch of data sets I have here, right? So say there is, this is where, you really define your vocabulary, and then, all that. And once you do this through this, it's a complete low code platform, as simple as it takes a couple of minutes to, for a very small data set, say something like, with files, to, you just set up data pipelines. If your data is really sitting in an application or a very large database, you set up a pipeline, and for it to respond back with whatever we just saw here, it's all of that happens without any user writing a single line of code to produce those insights, right? So this is how, you connect to any of the data sources, using that low code application I just showed. And at the same time, data is not static. We have an ability to tap into streams, whether it is even Hub, Kafka, or any of those data. We can connect to those to continuously train Kia on this new data, or it can be scheduled in microbatch schedules or on request or batch schedules and all that. And again, as I said, the data can come from anywhere: files, databases, APIs. So, and one key aspect to this, it's around, especially when we are talking about consuming information in natural language. So definitely, the vocabulary plays a role. So this also helps solve one very critical problem in data management, around business terms or data glossary. I mean, most of the time, you have these, the data are more technical. It could be like, sales underscore ANT, or, but actually it really means sales or a sales amount or something like that. So using this vocabulary, you really have an opportunity to map or define, synonyms, which could be more closer to your business needs, and then, use that. Rather than referring to those technical names, users can ask questions in these synonyms, which are very much, closer to the business needs. So you have an ability to say, for example, revenue could be the, revenue amount could be the data attribute, but you can call it, hey, what, income, proceeds, earnings, all of these really mean the same thing. So you have an option to ask the same question, in different ways, right? And once you do that, I mean, once you onboard that application, and then, it's like there are multiple ways to consume this. I'll just show quickly. There is the simple search interface I just showed. There is also a chat application, very similar to Microsoft Teams or Slack or any other chat application. You can chat with Kia, or you can also bring in other users. I'll just show that demo as well. And also there is a mobile app, where you can use that to ask questions, right? This is also one very, very interesting feature. Sometimes, when we get an answer or when we have a BI output, it is not as simple as getting the output. There is a follow. I mean, we really would like to take it action. Maybe, say, for example, when there is an insight, I may want to take this and then, flow this to another downstream application, or as simple as I may want to share this with somebody or create a task. All those, there is a whole bunch of out of the box business integrations that comes with, or it could even be integrating it within your own enterprise application. So we use, within this application, we do support a framework around, for reverse ETL to take your data back to your business applications or take perform actions and all that, right? And all of this, it's completely application is cloud neutral. It's Dockerized containers. Most of our enterprise applications, we deploy it, we bring the code, and then it runs within your firewall. Or we also have a SaaS offering as well, where we host the solution. So both the options are available, completely cloud agnostic. That's at a very, very high level is what, as I said, it just as simple as it just takes less than 5 minutes. You can onboard a data set and start asking questions. That's all it takes. But at the same time, I definitely I put an asterisk in the sense for large enterprise implementations. So you don't have to write the code, but at the same time, setting up the pipeline, defining the vocabulary, all of that happens through the low code interface still. And then you have an ability to set up this application, right? So this is the whole ecosystem. I mean, there is a whole bunch of, I'll quickly show these different apps. I mean, you have the studio, which is the low code platform for you to, bring up an application. And then, you have the search widget, the chat, as well as the mobile app, which is, and very high level summary of the features. It's white labeled. It can be customized, completely customized to reflect your brand, your guide, everything, right from the chart colors to everything, can be customized. Because the way our customers really use this is, even though we call it as Kia, it is either Twinkle, Oscar, Ginger, Engineering, whatever it is. I think they call their own, give their own name. That's the way they consume it. So it is completely white labeled. It provides. I'll just quickly show in the demo. I'll show some of these features as well, right? Um, why did we do this? Predominantly, as I said, one of the key thing is the time to market. For you to bring an application up and running, and it's absolutely no time you can do that. At the same time, as I said, for you to produce new insights, I think that is a significant overhead, or rather pain point today. You may have the fanciest of dashboards, but there is always this one metric, which is missing, or there is one perspective of this data, which is missing, which results in um, doing another project, or rather, making slight modifications, making changes to the dashboard, or adding a new metric. That takes a lot of time. I think, that is a significant, business problem we are trying to address here, in the sense, why can't it be completely dynamic? Let people, if there are 100 attributes available, why can't the users ask any kind of questions? I think, in those within that data set. I think that's the major problem, we're really trying to address here, right? Yeah, I'll just, it's again under the summary of the features. In summary, this is what the Kia does. It's a simplest conversational interface with an ability to ask questions in the language you speak, response in both. I'll show this voice response as well. It's almost like how you have your Siri or Alexa. It is available in phone as well as an iPad. I mean, because the iPad application is one, where some of our doctors use this when they are handling patients, or, when they're business. So they just use this iPad interface and then, talk to the device to get an answer. Hey, show me the vaccine schedule for this patient. And hey, pull me the medical record. Should, all these kind of questions, they just ask using a voice interface. And it also provides a very simple summary in visual, in voice, as well as it brings back the response in visuals, text, and all that, right? And the fourth point is extremely important. I mean, while we as much talk about making information access simple, Kia does provide a very, very robust security infrastructure. You have an ability to define, or rather, manage PII information, sensitive information. You can define, hey, what, these are all sensitive, and so it's like this. If I say this particular field is sensitive, definitely, when Kia responds back, it's going to mask the data element. At the same time, you have an ability to turn this on or off for different users based on rules and all that. So there is a whole bunch of security, feature that comes packed with it. But ultimate goal is this, how can we really simplify the data access, right? I think that's what Kia does. Majority, even though we're kind of client new, I mean, we do extensively use Microsoft Azure behind the scenes for the speech services to language understanding to whatnot. I think it extensively leverages Microsoft Azure. Before I come to the use case teams, let me quickly jump into a few more demos, or let me show you this. Right. So see, I was just showing this example around, there is this, I have this data, it's these are the attributes I have. It's like list of all the IT inventories. I have all the IT assets across by location to department, whatnot. I mean, all this data set I have, it's a very simple data. But so here is a data element. Now, with this, there is a whole bunch of questions, I can ask, say, let me go here, start from scratch. So simple, the data glossary brings up like this. Hey, these are the different data elements. You can filter them by categories or numbers and all that. And as I said, what you see below that is the vocabulary. So when I say, say for example, I can ask let me show an example here. So show me by, so I'm just asking a very simple question. Hey, show me the total cost by department. I can refer to this by department, or I have synonyms called division. So I can even ask the same question by, it's still going to bring the same amount of information. So this is where this vocabulary kind of comes into play, how we really make the technical data, easily available for business people and all, it kind of solve this problem around data glossary, mapping your, the data elements to the business terms, right? You can, it's suddenly, you see that there is a new term, which you really want to do. All you have to do is using, you have to just go and add it here and define, and then Kia will start responding. Say for example, project name, I just want to call it a, so something. So even if I want to call it a sniffer, the next time it would understand and then, use that to answer the questions. That's the way um, Kia kind of, takes the synonym, and then, the language models get retrained, and then, it would have an ability to respond back with that, right? So that is, in terms of, say, um, so let me just ask you some more examples, right? So say, for example, I'm just doing an analysis on vulnerabilities. Hey, how there is a whole bunch of my IT assets, which I'm really trying to do, take care of these vulnerabilities, and then, so that I can put some patches based on, what kind of, so it's like I say that, hey, what, show me. So it's going to give me, hey, this is by count of assets. This is the number of vulnerabilities you have. I can say that, hey, what, can you just break it down by location? Right. So it's going to say that, hey, that number. Let me, okay. Okay. So it says, what, these are the vulnerabilities I have by different location. And say, for example, I have a presentation tomorrow, so even though it kind of responds back to these different questions, I have a presentation tomorrow where I really need to go and present this to someone, on the, how many vulnerabilities to have, what kind of measures we have taken, and which one is due, which one is critical, and all this, right? So I can say that, hey, what, rather than I start with some questions like this. It gives me by assets, it just says, hey, this many. But so I can say that, hey, I'm really going to use this for a presentation. So I can say that, hey, let me go and create my, I'm just giving a story and say that, hey, so I add this, and then, I say that, hey, what, I'm also trying to find out by, I can say that, say, by device type, right? So I'm just going, what kind of, show me the vulnerabilities by device type, right? So it just splits it by software, and then, it's like, so I'm also going to add this to my story, right? So once I keep adding something like this, what I can do is, there is something called as a storyline. I also already created one, so I can go and play this as a storyboard, and then, I have a presentation here. The major difference is, unlike the way, we do static slides and all that here, it's like it is real-time data. When we are presenting, or rather, this data, it kind of, the data gets refreshed real time. And it's like you also have an ability to, most of the time, when we present something like this, there is always this one question, which may not be there, which we normally either try to answer it differently, or we call somebody. But at the same time, in Kia, when we do not, definitely, using an application like this, you can also ask these when someone says that, hey, what, this is for this particular location. Can we also do a drill down by another dimension or look at a specific time frame, which is not covered in the presentation? Definitely all these kind of dynamic, the questions you would be able to answer, with an interface like this. I think that's the one key feature, in the sense, you're not just limited by dashboard or a metric, with a very, very small subset of the data. All the questions kind of, they get answered with the complete, or rather, whatever data set, Kia has at its disposal, right? So this is one interface, what we call as, it's the search interface. It's very, very simple, very similar to our, the popular search engines. It just brings back the frequently asked questions, the questions you asked, and then, you have this inbox where you have an ability to go back to the questions which you asked before, and then, you can come back, you can mark some of them as favorite, you can build your storylines and all this. This is one interface. The second one is what we call as, the chat interface. Let me quickly show you this. Okay, so you can see that, the interface is very similar to any of collaboration platforms, whether it is Slack, Teams, or chat or anything. And then, so let me go and bring the same questions I had. Say, for example, I have my cloud infrastructure storage usage here, right? So on this particular data set, I can say, hey, what? Let me start a new thread. I ask this question, hey, what? Show me the average storage cost by component, in the second half of 22. What I can also do is, since it is more of a chat interface, I can ask, how about since it is more of a conversational interface, it retains the context. We were just talking about the average storage cost by component. What we changed was only the timeline. It understands, even though I kind of used a pronoun and then, it just changed the year alone, it is able to still retain, hey, what, we're just still talking about the average cost by component, and then it just applied a different timeline to it. I think that's the idea behind, a chat interface like this. It's even here, it's absolutely, you can just you can have something like, hey, what percentage of our instances is Azure, and it just completely dynamic interface. And say for example, when I have let me give an example. So here, show me the project, with the least amount of storage costs, right? So it just says, I talked about least. It also makes some, it just gives me that information. Okay, what, this is the one, and right. What it also does is, there is a whole bunch of insights, it just brings into picture, right? I mean, say, if I say that, since we are talking about the least storage, you can also have it say, hey, by the way, would you be interested in looking at something which is the most number? So all these kind of suggestions, and then, the amount of insights it can bring in. Let me show you, just like, from this particular data set, I can go to, say, the one, which we just used, for the vulnerabilities or the infrastructure asset management. Even here, I can say that, hey, show me the, say, let me just say that by device type. Okay. So it just, hey, this is how much, there are close to 70,000 diffs, and then, it's like this. So you can go to an insight and then say, for example, you can look for, you can say that, hey, show me the trend of it. It is going to do a trend. I say that, so it also gives me an option to break it down by different dimensions and all that. So, or say, for example, even if I go here, I can go and ask for a forecast. Now, it's just going to take me, you see this pink line? It also does these, the advanced, relatively, advanced analytics in terms of, we can do a forecast. It can tell you the contributing factors. There is a whole bunch of insights which just comes along with these questions, right? So what you see here, it just shows the trend as well as, it does a little bit of forecast based on the data points that's available and all that. The key thing here, one more, say I'm looking at a data set like this. Now, I really want to look at, hey, something doesn't make sense. So say, for example, I'm just switching to a monthly trend here. So And I see that, there is an issue, there is a dip somewhere here. I really need to bring in other people. What I can do is I have an option to invite other people to the conversation and, bring them into it. And then say, for example, the two of us now we can chat, it's like, I can go and have a conversation with this person, say, and then, I can just talk to him and then both of us look at the same data rather than the way we normally do it today, by taking a screenshot, sending it in an email and all that. Now, the interface you can see it's kind of very similar to Twitter-like stuff, so both of us, we can now, he can say, hey, what, but this is why it is looking at it. I can create an action. Say, for example, I can just say that, hey, this is an action item for somebody to look on. So we use Notion. So similar, it can be any external application from within this application. You can bring in other users, have a conversation. You can create or rather, do these integrations to the download any of those business applications. All of this can be, it's possible, within this whole application, right? So now we saw the Kia search and then, this is the chat application. Let me just quickly show you the mobile version of it. Just give me 1 second. Let me cast my mobile app here. So this is the mobile version of the same application. Whatever say the data sets, where we just asked, all these are completely omni-channel. So the history, the questions, the data sets, whatever it is, these are just shared across. So just like how we might be, say we are in a airport or we are in a customer meeting, somebody is asking a question, rather than looking at other applications, definitely, we can just go and ask these questions. Hey, it's show me the Azure instance in you by payment structure. So it's just going to bring me the data, that particular question I have. It's taking a lot more than what I thought. Usually this is what happens. Things go wrong when there is a demo. Let me just do it again. Okay. It just brings that particular question, it kind of brings the data back. I can continue this. Yeah, I don't know if you were able to hear the voice. So it kind of responds back in voice as well. Say, I mean, I can just ask follow-up questions like this, and then, it just goes on. What percentage of instances are Azure pay-as-you-go? So even here, now, I just see that this is something I want to discuss with somebody. I can bring more people into the conversation. We can just chat. That's very similar to how we use any of the messaging app. We can do the same thing on data sets. So there is this whole bunch of data set, which I'm trained on, which I can use. Others, we can collaborate on data sets. I can create one, I can invite others and then, collaborate. So all we have to do is just switch the context to a different data set and then, just ask questions, right? I think that's the whole idea behind this, in the sense, without writing a code for any new metric, or rather, to have BI output, in the web as well as, mobile platforms or whatever it is. I think, you just have one low code interface. You train one data sets or n number of data sets. Now, you just have the ability to just ask these questions, stitch them together, into a storyboard. The shift is more towards, hey, what, rather than somebody pre-creating a dashboard, Now, you have the ability for whoever the users are, they can ask questions, they can put together, stitch them into a storyboard, present it with others, or rather, from here you integrate with the other applications, you collaborate. All those kind of features are kind of, built within this, platform for data. I mean, that's at a very, very high level is no, it's what the application key is supposed to be, right? Any questions before? I mean, I just have a few more slides, where I'll just talk about the use cases, how some of our customers are using, where they are using it, and all that. Any questions, anything on the chat?
No questions yet, Shiva.
Okay.
Please post your questions in chat if you have anything.
Great. So just to continue, I mean, the last few slides, I mean, while I showed the application, right? How this could be used, or rather the way some of users are using it. One is definitely it's like the very simplified access to data. I mean, if it is towards improving the data literacy or making it the data available to the users, put a simple search widget. You can embed this widget. As I said, it is white label within any of the application, and then it's we call it as a question widget. This could be embedded anywhere, within that application. That is one. The other thing, I showed you this mobile app. We call it as the momentary information access. I'm traveling, or when most of the time, we end up either chatting with somebody or calling someone for a piece of information or looking at a dashboard and all that. Rather, um, the way we communicate today, using message apps, the similar experience, we're just trying to replicate by having the ability to ask those questions on a mobile phone, right? Collaborate on data, I just showed you, using a very similar, the application that's a chat application, where you have an ability to ask these questions, bring in other users, you do the analysis, you can collaborate on that, everybody sees the same amount of data. Usually what happens is, way we do it, and then through emails and all that, somebody will say, hey, no, I'm looking at it differently. What is that you're looking at? Maybe, so these kind of email exchanges, we could avoid by bringing in collaboration, where both the users or all the users, they see the same data and then the same responses and all that. Insights, actionable insights, as I said, you have an ability to integrate the analytics output into any of any application which supports APIs or any of the enterprise. You have an ability to do the downward integration as well, right? In fact, this is one very common use case which some of our customers are using. It's like you have these traditional reports, hundreds of them sitting in, for each one of them created for a specific purpose. Rather, you have in one generic interface, you have an ability to ask a question, download it, the completely dynamic um, uh, query or questioning interface, which kind of you can do the slicing and dicing, you can do the filtering for that particular, and then all these, the traditional reports kind of, could be replaced with an interface like this, right? So some of our happy customers, and then, the installations where we have, the very first one, we just did it like almost 5 years back, was with Daimler. And then, we do have hospitals, the doctors using an interface like this for asking questions, especially, when they're handling patients, they have an ability to use an iPad or a voice interface to ask questions, right? And again, as I said, very, very, it's definitely, it takes very less time to bring up an application. And then, with all the possibilities, it can do with the different kind of questions and all that. So please do reach out to us. I'd be more than happy. We do start with the engagement with, the consultation of free POCs and all that. Or if you need to do a deep dive on any of the technical aspects of it and all, I'd be more than happy to do. So this is the summary. I mean, it's a very simple, smart, and secure interface. That's the way, we would like to call Kia as, right? So again, just again, ending with this the thought around, generative AI and chat GPT, right? I think I mean, this is a very common question I have. That's one of the reasons, I also thought I could put this, the slide. Can ChatGPT do something very similar? It is still a probabilistic model, right? But I think when we're dealing with numbers, you need that accuracy and certainty. I mean, I cannot say that, hey, your consumption could be $1 million. Definitely not. It has to be accurate to the decimal. So I think that's where an interface like this is extremely, extremely, important. And because with especially around accuracy, trust, reliability, and also more to do with the privacy aspects as well, right? I think all our installations, as I said, it runs within the firewall. It's the data doesn't go out. Our application kind of coexists with your data, and then and having said that, I think we do have the SaaS model for other users as well, right? So I think can data and analytics be generative? It can be, definitely. I think and we don't know, and I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but still the primary challenges around data are around the quality, information security, the trust factor, and all. It's extremely, extremely critical. So that's about it. I think, and that's why, we want to call it, I think, with an interface like this, which makes answers and insights so much more easier. Thank you. So that's the presentation and then the demo. If any questions I can take. And as I said, definitely feel free to reach out to us. We can do have follow-ups or a deep dive or custom POCs if you really want to play around. We can create a very small application for, we can share the URL. You can play around with that as well. So feel free to please do reach out to us.